Understanding a historical clothing as art or fashion. Historically, these garments function as the physical codification of a civilization's foundational philosophy. This is what scholars call cultural will, the underlying genetic seed that defines a people's identity. This invisible framework dictates everything a society builds, from the hierarchy of its political institutions to the layout of its cities and the columns of its temples. Understanding a culture requires examining its most intimate artifact, the fabric constructed to sit directly against the human body. The structural divergence between traditional Korean and Western clothing manifests two distinct epistemological frameworks. The Western worldview operates on a driving force called differentiation. Differentiation relies on analytical division. It breaks wholes into autonomous parts, drawing sharp boundaries and organizing those fragments into a rigid hierarchy. The traditional Korean framework operates on the concept of japwa, or grafting. Japwa is a centerless, egalitarian integration. It functions much like grafting a branch onto a tree. This system harmonizes opposing forces, like humanity and nature, while strictly preserving their distinct individual characteristics. If the West builds walls to define the individual, and Korea builds networks to integrate them, that divergence dictates exactly how a tailor cuts a piece of cloth. Western differentiation traces back to early dualistic philosophies and the Christian theology of an absolute separation between the creator and the creation. This theology established a strict hierarchy of existence, with God at the top, then humans, and nature at the base. Placing humans above nature created a relationship of dominance. It drove a mechanist, rationalist worldview, where humans use reason to analyze the natural world. We see this elevation of individual autonomy in ancient Greek culture, where the ideal state is defined by the excellence of the isolated part. This philosophy of separation demands garments that isolate and explicitly define the human form. Western tailoring achieved this through anatomical fittedness. It uses rigid darts, intricate structural seams, and physical segmentation to mold fabric to body contours. The result is a static, idealized silhouette that maintains its shape regardless of changes in the natural environment. Western dress operates as a physical boundary, a wearable armor designed to assert the individual's independence from their surroundings. East Asian cultures share a holistic worldview, but the structural execution of that holism varies. The Chinese will operates on assimilation, where diverse elements merge into a dominant center. The Japanese will relies on condensation, compressing cosmic energy into a singular microobject. Korea's japwo rejects both, favoring continuous interaction between autonomous parts. The Dongan myth provides the precedent for this, detailing the union of the sky-worshipping Hwanung tribe and the earth-worshipping Unya tribe, without erasing either group's identity. This theological mandate for coexistence without erasure trickles down into aesthetic rules. Because the ultimate goal is continuous, dynamic interaction rather than static isolation, the clothing cannot be a closed system. This brings us to the aesthetic category of shinmyeong, a state of divine energy and the overcoming of adversity through motion. To facilitate shinmyeong, traditional Korean clothing prioritizes absolute mobility. The two-piece structure of the jogori top and baji bottom is a deliberate rejection of full-body binding. It utilizes an open structure. Strategic slits and wide openings avoid constraining human anatomy, allowing fabric to catch air during movement. Because of this design, the aesthetic value of a hanbok is only realized when it is subjected to kinetic forces. This principle applies even to high-stakes motion. In a traditional sword dance, the flying skirts and sashes maintain elegance while executing aggressive, rapid movements. Under the rule of japwa, the garment acts as an amplifier for human energy. It exists to trace the body's movement through space rather than defining its shape. Because japwa values adaptation over rigidity, the wearer is expected to alter the garment dynamically. The clothing is adjusted based on the immediate physical task or environmental conditions, like the wind. We see this in the practice of the good old chima, the act of hoisting and tucking the outer skirt to expose the layers beneath, which effectively alters the formal silhouette. This active rejection of static perfection brings us to asymmetry. The Korean aesthetic avoids artificial mirrored balance. In this philosophical framework, perfect symmetry is a closed, dead system. Asymmetry creates a dynamic tension that requires active energy to maintain. The single chest tie, the haute garime, and the off-center collar structure are intentional, engineered imbalances. They force the eye to follow the garment's active negotiation with gravity. Through variability and asymmetry, the garment forces the wearer into a continuous, active negotiation with their own body and environment. When we move from the energy of Shinmyeong to the philosophy in its resting state, we find the concepts of sobak, simplicity, and Pyeonghan, tranquility. These categories forge the physical trait of naturalness. Traditional textiles often leave fibers unbleached and undyed. This choice prioritizes the raw texture of the material over chemical manipulation. It rejects complex ornamentation, favoring the inclusion of empty space, or yobek, within the silhouette. The foundational cuts of the fabric, such as the curve of the Byosan socks, are designed to mimic the yielding topography of the natural landscape. This simplicity reflects an advanced, deliberate refusal to adopt the Western human versus nature differentiation. The abstract concepts of Shinmyeong, Haeok, Sobak, and Pyeonghan translate into the physical traits of mobility, variability, asymmetry, and naturalness, all anchored by Jokwa. The Western suit operates as a fortress of differentiation, enforcing the boundary of the individual. Traditional Korean garments serve as an interface between the wearer and the world. The hanbok's lack of a rigid fit is its greatest technological achievement, allowing it to seamlessly graft the wearer to their environment. It is a wearable philosophy, executing the cultural will of Jopwa. Beauty is found in the centerless, dynamic integration of human, fabric, and world.